of Labour, Black Socialists, Socialism and Strawberries. Today, we have got a really, really good guest here to discuss situations that have been going on in Ghana. So without further ado, I would love to welcome Ni Kote Nikwe. And how are you doing today, Ni?
I'm doing well.
It's good to have you here. So could you explain to the audience exactly what you do in Ghana, please?
Okay, so actually, I'm currently working and living in the US. I do research in Ghana. I live there actually, but I'm currently working here for some time now. I'm a media studies teacher. I teach in a university, and I'm interested in issues around representation, especially in media. And also issues around social justice and how the intersections of politics and culture within the media.
Oh, that's absolutely brilliant. So, Ni, could you tell us a little bit about what's been going on in Ghana lately, please?
Right. And so one of the most topical issues happening in Ghana right now is, it keeps reoccurring. It pops its head every now and then when it comes to the issue of protections and rights for LGBTQ folks in Ghana. So recently, the LGBTQ Rights Ghana Association inaugurated or opened an office. This happened in January 31st. It was attended by some diplomats from the Australian embassy and some folks from the EU as well. And, it went on quietly, nothing really happened. And then, there were calls from anti-LGBTQ groups in Ghana, from the religious movements, from politicians as well, to close down the office and then to also revoke the diplomatic credentials of the folks who attended the LGBTQ opening resource center that was created to support the movement and advocate for rights and protections for LGBTQ folks. So currently, there's been a huge backlash. There's a lot of homophobia, queerphobia, transphobia, etc. in the media as they platform a lot of anti-LGBTQ groups and also kind of sort of legitimize a kind of debate of people's humanity, right? And so there are debates about whether to have rights or not for human beings. The irony is not missing in those types of discussions, but that's what's been happening. Yeah.
Yeah, so in terms of the laws for LGBTQ people in Ghana, could you explain a little bit about what's currently out there for Ghanaians, please?
Yeah, so currently, I mean, there are no laws specifically criminalizing or making an offense out of being a person of from LGBTQ community per se. There are a colonial era law that criminalizes a particular types of sexual acts that are deemed as unnatural carnal knowledge. So this ranges from oral sex to a myriad of other sex acts, right, that affect heterosexual people as well. But then, the law is being operationalized in a particular way to claim that, gay sex, quote unquote, is a criminal activity. And so that has been kind of the fulcrum on which a lot of these religious fundamentalists that are cut across, the Islamic community, some sections of the Islamic community, some sections of the Christian community, some sections of the traditional indigenous religious community as well. And so there's been a push for stricter and stronger laws. So they are saying, these unnatural carnal knowledge laws are not enough. The state has to make a clear stance against the rights and protections of LGBTQ folks in Ghana. And so that's currently some of the debate going on. And so even some members of parliament have called for even the criminalization of advocacy for the rights of LGBTQ folks. So essentially, I think what these MPs are saying, that even me being here and talking about the rights of LGBTQ folks should be criminalized. So this is a worrying development in terms of freedom of expression, freedom of association, and all those human rights freedoms that are guaranteed under our constitution.
Yeah, so could you tell us about what's been going on the ground, really? Like what's grassroots groups have been doing to deal with this situation, because it sounds really, really worrying, to be honest.
Right, and it is worrying. It is worrying. The attack seems to be getting fiercer and fiercer as these issues pop up and the controversies that surround them. So there are a myriad of groups that are engaged in trying to fight for the rights and protections of LGBTQ folks. There's LGBT Rights Ghana. They have been very vocal. In fact, they are the ones who opened the center. There have been a myriad of other groups that are stepping in to advocate for support of protections for LGBTQ folks. The Silent Majority is one campaign that's been launched by groups in the diaspora and in Ghana as well, who are championing and showing solidarity for the freedoms and protections of LGBT folks in Ghana. There are also a myriad of creative folks who are voicing their opinions and thoughts and solidarity in support of LGBTQ folks. Net Rights Ghana, which is a women's advocacy and feminists group, has also issued a letter stating its support and solidarity for the rights and protections of LGBTQ folks. And so it's been interesting to see the sort of support and solidarity that has been arising out of this. You have a few lawyers and so who are offering legal arguments, etc., to support the right to advocate for the protections of LGBT folks. But generally, these have been some of the trends that I've noticed from where I sit.
Yeah, so have any of the trade unions in Ghana got involved in this as well?
As far as I can tell, no. As far as I can tell, not really. I mean, this is not surprising. It's such a hot topic that open articulation for the support and solidarity for the rights and protections of LGBT folks is seen as a taboo area. It's like you're not supposed to say anything. And so
even amongst the unions.
Oh yeah. Even one of the things, since I'm a media scholar, I've particularly been interested in what the Ghana Journalism Association has been saying, because the whole journalist group calling themselves Journalists Against LGBTQ has sprung up, and these are journalists who are advocating for taking away the rights and protections, and essentially only calling for discrimination and hate towards LGBTQ folks. And so I'm not surprised that the trade unions haven't really been loud and clear about their position on this subject matter.
Oh, that's absolutely shocking, to be honest. I feel that the trade union should be getting involved and supporting the LGBTQ community. So in terms of moving forwards, what is the plan on the ground?
So part of what I have seen so far is there have been calls for support, for donations. LGBTQ Rights Ghana has launched a GoFundMe page. I believe I sent that to you. And so they are calling for support and donations because the center was essentially closed down, and I forgot to mention this. So because of the uproar, and some of the calls from the religious fundamentalists within, Ghana, they called for the closure of the resource center that was essentially, constructed or at least opened to support the freedoms and protections and advocate for against discrimination for LGBTQ folks. So there have been some calls for some donations to support towards, essentially getting back some of the stuff they've lost in terms of the closure of the resource center and some of the people who have been affected directly by the closure. There have also been calls for, by the Silent Majority, I believe I sent you the link as well, where we are calling for support and solidarity against the threats of attack and violence against LGBT folks in Ghana.
Yeah, so the links to both of these campaigns will be shared on social media. So I hope our audience will share it widely so that more of us can get involved in this. So what about support from overseas?
Right, and it's a tricky thing, especially the way it's interpreted by some of the anti-LGBT groups in Ghana. They see support and solidarity from outside the country as a form of imperialism, and so they say Europe is coming to impose their values and beliefs on us, right? And it's fun. It's interesting how they've reinterpreted international solidarity that has been happening throughout the world, the history of the world, in terms of movements and social justice issues that always transcend and ask for international solidarity, right? From the fight against apartheid in South Africa that asks for solidarity internationally, to solidarity groups elsewhere who all call on international solidarity. But within Ghana, this is interpreted as a form of neo-colonialism, imperialism, intrusions into the country. And so part of the discourse here is to really weave an important narrative to remind folks that international solidarity has always been a part of how subordinate or marginalized groups have used advocacy to support their causes. And so we are calling for support and solidarity and to put pressure on the government to really push back against the discrimination and the anti-LGBTQ rhetoric and hate that is being spewed not only in the media but even from the politicians themselves.
Yeah. So what can we do in the UK? Shall we contact our MPs? What can we do to bring awareness to this situation?
I think you can amplify the voices of LGBTQ Rights Ghana. Their Twitter handle is LGBTQ Rights Ghana. Their website is lgbtqrightsgh.org. They have been amplifying what they need and the voices and how folks can help. One of them, as I mentioned, was donations. One of the other one is also helping folks to sign onto the solidarity note. I believe part of the cause of also building solidarity internationally is also calling on leaders within various countries and institutions to call on Ghana to stop the Ghanaian government and the politicians who have been pushing some of this anti-LGBTQ rhetoric, to call them to order, and then to ask them to respect the rights and dignity of LGBT folks in Ghana.
Thank you. And, what other campaigns have you got going on?
Well, personally, I have been looking at, just the media discourses surrounding the rhetoric. And, it's worrying how humanity is kind of positioned as a debate. And so they'll say the LGBTQ plus debate, and then, people's humanity are discussed as if it's a debate. And this is pretty worrying, especially from a media scholar's perspective, that we realize how representations of marginalized communities have been mobilized to incite violence and harm. And so it's very worrying for me. So part of, I think, something I have been doing and kind of articulating is really calling out the media for the bias, their anti-LGBTQ bias, which they hide under a facade of let's listen to both sides of a story. And it's as if we can they're both sides to affirming a person's humanity. And so these are some of the things I have been doing personally, right, in support of some of the anti-LGBTQ rhetoric and hate that has been going on within the country.
Oh, you've been doing absolutely amazing work. That sounds absolutely brilliant. Have you got any plugs or links that we can share with our audience of the work that you've been doing?
Yeah, I have a podcast called Our Culture. If you go on SoundCloud and just type Our Culture, you should find it. But I want to plug LGBTQ Rights Ghana and their website once again, and hope folks.
We'll send a link. We'll definitely share out the links for them because they're doing really, really important work.
Right, so and very brave work. Yeah,
exactly. So in an ideal world, like, where would you like to see Ghana with their LGBTQ laws?
I think it's important that we affirm the dignity and humanity of LGBT folks within Ghana. I think it's time to see religious fundamentalists not really be aligned with power. It's interesting to see the proximity of the religious fundamentalist and the government. And so I would like to see some distance, and I'd like to see the government actually protect the rights of Ghanaians, protect their rights to express themselves how they want, protect their ability to fundamentally live their fullest possible lives.
Do you think education plays a role in this as well?
Oh, wow, that's a big one because a couple of years ago, there was a launch of um, uh, a transformation of sex education in Ghana. It was called the Comprehensive Sexuality Education. And then part of the content just had some information on same-sex relations and LGBTQ folks. It had very interesting and progressive ideas around gender and so on. And the church again pushed back, and there was a big uproar. It once again led to this sort of backlash we're having now around anti-LGBTQ issues. And so
Mm.
even within the education is also a contested terrain, right? There are people in Ghana who believe that children should not be taught about the existence of LGBTQ people, as if they don't exist in Ghana, which is kind of ironic because it's knowledge. And so part of, even education has become very contested, that even basic forms of information around sex education have become contested, controversial matters as well.
Yeah, like obviously with parents refusing their children to get educated on it, and then obviously with the media peddling out their stuff as well, obviously it's just going to continue this way if things don't change over there. So in terms of your work and what you've been putting out, are there any other journalists that are doing the same as you?
Yeah. There are a couple of journalists who seem to be offering kind of a balanced view, or at least just doing plain journalism, right? In terms of ensuring that they are not platforming misinformation and so on. But they are few and far between. I know of some journalists who have been calling out their community in terms of trying to get them to do the right thing, and really even just do basic journalism, right? Eschew the misinformation, eschew the hate. In fact, the Ghana Journalism Association's own code of ethics points out that they shouldn't produce any material that has the potential to lead to hatred, ridicule, or discrimination on the grounds of a person's age, education, religion, gender, ethnicity, color, creed, legal status, disability, marital status, or sexual orientation. But unfortunately, if you look across many sections of the media, there's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of apolitical, ahistoric stuff that's spewed out in terms of having both sides of a debate sort of arrangement.
Yeah, so in terms of your lawmakers and stuff, is there anybody out there that's actually standing by the LGBTQ community? Like, is there one specific person, or is there anybody that's fighting this cause?
As far as I can tell, there isn't anybody who has boldly kind of come out showing solidarity and support. There are a few members of parliament. There's one member of parliament who is not a member of parliament anymore. So I guess that's why he was free to say what he said. But essentially, if I can recall correctly, he said, the world is moving forward. These are rights that we will essentially have to deal with, and then we'll essentially have to affirm. And so, I mean, so far, from my perspective, he's the closest that has come to showing any form of solidarity. But even he, backtracked a little bit and, said, I'm a religious person, and my religion is against this, but I'm a lawyer and I believe the rights of people have to be affirmed, etc. And so there's not really a lot of people who are coming out to really show solidarity. There's a lot of silence, and there's a lot of also political opportunism, where you have members of the opposition party calling on the president to state his position, because the president had been largely silent about it when the controversy started. And so they took this as an opportunity to kind of call out the president for keeping quiet, because the president had initially been quoted on an international platform where he said, once there's a strong movement in Ghana and public opinion shifts, then the laws will probably change, right? And then they use that as a means to attack him, because they understand the political climate and the consequences of even showing an ounce of understanding for the rights and protections of LGBTQ folks in Ghana.
So it's basically one of those situations where if he reveals that he supports the rights of LGBTQ people, he could potentially lose his presidency, right?
I honestly don't think that's going to happen, but there'll be a big political backlash. People are too stuck in their ways in terms of voting. I don't think the political consequences are that high. Ghanaian politicians are scandal proof. I mean, they could literally shoot a gun at a polling station and nothing happens to them. It actually happened, right? A sitting member of parliament went to a polling station and fired a so-called warning shot. They were questioned and released, right? Ghanaian politicians are like Teflon. they are impervious to scandal. So if any of them comes out to say there'll be serious consequences for saying, I support the humanity and dignity and protections for LGBT folks, I don't think the fallout will be that significant. The sort of scandalous things they've done that have not led them to, they're scandal proof.
Yeah. So in terms of actions that we could take in the UK, could you give us 3 actions that we could take?
Off the top of my head, keep amplifying the voices of LGBTQ rights Ghana. They have been championing protections and dignity for LGBTQ folks in Ghana. I would say keep sharing the information and please donate when you can. Put pressure on people who engage with the Ghanaian government to really make their stance clear and also affirm and ask them to affirm the rights and dignity of LGBTQ folks in Ghana.
Oh, that sounds good. So in terms of, moving forwards and getting the rights for the LGBTQ people, where do you see this heading? Do you see this heading any worse, or do you see this heading for a breakthrough?
I think the tide is changing. People openly supporting and calling for solidarity. I think the tide is changing, and I think religious fundamentalists have always been on the wrong side of history. This will not be new. They will lose. These fundamentalist perspectives they've had on sex and sexuality and gender, they've been losing, right? And so, in fact, when I was preparing for this interview, I was just reading a little bit on even the church's position on contraceptive use and how opposed they were to it. But now they can't deny it, and I believe we're going to see the same thing happen again. They're on the wrong side of history, and history will prove that.
Now, I love your passion for it, and I think that you've been doing absolutely amazing work, and obviously the Ghana LGBTQ group as well. Do you know how they've been impacted, obviously, without their centre and stuff? How has this prevented them from supporting the people that they support?
Right, and so just based off on what I've been able to glean of their public interaction, some of them have been under threat as usual. In fact, the traditional council where the community center was cited threatened to burn down the center. So obviously threats of violence. I'm sure some of them have gone into hiding and been staying quiet for some time. And so they've been deeply impacted. And of course, a lot of energies and a lot of resources were pumped into the creation of the resource center to affirm the dignity and protections for LGBT folks. So once that center is missing, right, all that energy sort of has been dissipated in a way. But of course, that energy lives on in the sort of solidarity their actions have built across the world and in Ghana as well.
Yeah, it just sounds absolutely dreadful what's going on out there. I hope that people from the audience will definitely donate if they can afford to, and just support this brilliant work that you've been doing. And so finally, have you been involved in any other campaigns going on in Ghana? Is there any other issues that have been coming out from there?
Currently, I'm just observing, like I said, I'm just been monitoring, media discourses around a myriad of issues. And that's what currently I'm doing. I'm hoping to start the second installation of my podcast, the second season, which I've put on hold for quite some time. And so I'm hoping to continue that and still continue engaging the politics of media representation in Ghana.
Okay, That sounds absolutely brilliant. And yeah, I will plug that podcast as well, so our audience can have a listen on that. And yeah, if there's any other campaigns that you want to plug before we make some tracks, then yeah, you're more than welcome to do that quickly now.
I just go back to saying, go to the LGBTQ rights Ghana Twitter handle, check out their website, and I'll say engage with what they are saying. Please follow them, please donate, please support, please show solidarity. Hello?
I think we just lost the link with her.
Yeah.
No, the struggle continues.
Aluta continua.
I don't know what happened there, but something happened there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was absolutely great having you here, Nee. And
Thank
yeah,
you.
thank you for joining us. Right, so we're now going to move on to the Labour Black Socialist campaign strike. And Ridwan, what has been going on? Give us an update, my friend.
Thank you, my sister. It's been a rather busy week this week. I'm not as fancy as my sister Ekwa with all the graphics and so on, so I'm but a shadow of her usual presentation. But I can say that this week has been a significant week for Labour Black Socialists because we came out in support of the female candidates in Liverpool who were summarily railroaded by the Labour Party leadership in the mayoral nomination process. And we've been facing some pushback from some people on the left because we were introducing, arguing that this is an instance of institutionalized racism. The issue is that there are people in the Labour Party in positions and people who passionately believe in the Labour Party who do not want to go to the rule book. And we make no apologies to draw people's attention to Chapter 1, Clause 4, 2b of the rule book. And we also mention to people, attend to Chapter 5, Clause 1, 2, and 3. And then you will see why we say that this is an instance of racism. Because when we say that the Labour Party has the right to determine its policies must be consistent with the rule book. And secondly, in the same way that we say that public sector authorities have a public sector duty to take into account equality impacts, we require the same of the Labour Party. And in the Anna Rothery case, it is a disaster. And we make no apologies for coming out strongly. And if it had been only white females who were the candidates, our position would still be in defense of the white candidates. Because yes, we are Labour Black Socialists, we prioritize Black people, but we want justice for everyone. So people mustn't think that they, by pushing a race card our way, that they make us feel uncomfortable. No, we located as Black people in the lived experience as Black people, and we argue for Black people, but we want justice for everyone. So the Anna Rothery case, it has been a significant, and there the Liverpool activists who came out and significantly reversed a bureaucratic stitch-up to cancel the executive mayoral role as a way to nullify any plan by the candidates, especially Anna Rothery, the councillors defeated that move. The Labour Party must bear responsibility, and when it takes decision, it must take into account the equality impact of those decisions. So Liverpool has been a glorious week for us. In Manchester, we've had one of our members, leading person, fabulous, colorful personality, but strong on principle, wanting to stand as a delegate to the Women's Conference. And because she didn't tick a particular box, she looks the part, she is the part, she is Black. She didn't tick the box. So therefore, in the meeting where the nomination was being discussed, she was being disqualified by executive diktat. What we want to show is she managed to win the fight, but an excruciating battle. Equality needs not to be this hard. In Hackney, there was one of our members wanting to stand as a ward councillor. Now, this is a sister, she's Black, immersed in the struggles for poor people across the colour line in Hackney. She is known, she's got a name. The people in Hackney love her because she serves them. And she wants to institutionalize that service by standing as a ward councillor. Guess what? As in Manchester, in Hackney, people who ought to be natural allies of this sister, this comrade, they vote against her. They vote now for at least 40%, if not 50% of Hackney's population are Black people. One would assume, at least demographically, one would consider the equality impact of the ward council. How many? It is not that one is anti-white male. That is a prejudiced position. But it is necessary that when people who ought to be the natural allies of this sister, they ought to say, if we want to attend to the issues in Hackney, how many more white males do we need? It is like asking, how many white males do you need to put a bulb, electric bulb, on your ceiling? Same there. There are Black, there are white people, and there are good, exceptional. But the key issue is one needs to introduce the lived experience of Black people in the chamber. And this sister is unimpeachable at that level. So that was another struggle that was taking place. In Croydon, we had another case where a sister was wanting to get the nomination from a CLP to the National Women's Committee. But because a CLP cannot make nominations because of one or other bureaucratic rule from a level of authority in the Labour Party above the CLP, the place where people know the sister, that place where she is known, they cannot nominate her. But Labour Black Socialists is in the game, And we have someone who's been in the Labour Party for 18 years, came from the Democracy Review and said, ooh, the Democracy Review was my legitimizing process in the Labour Party. For the first time, I'm hearing issues that are particularly important to me being addressed. And yet we find the struggles around race, ethnicity, and class. Because people who should be our allies are the ones who are pointing fingers. And they are telling us it is class, not race. The reality is, we're not doing something that the bosses don't acknowledge. But by refusing to acknowledge the ethnic dimension of workers, the organized left is doing themselves a disservice. And this is not a new problem. Karl Marx did the same. He addressed the same question when he spoke to British workers who consider Irish workers as their enemies. He also said the same thing about white workers in the United States who considered African American workers as their enemies. And he said it is that divide and rule of the bosses that weaken the workers. Now, the difficulty is the experiences that we are having are not new. If one goes to the Bristol workers' strike, 1968, they had the same problems that Labour Black Socialists is experiencing. And one would have thought we would have moved on. In 1977, Brunswick, mainly Asian women, they wanted the right to organize a union, but there were particular issues there according to ethnicity in that company. And the organized trade unions had palpitations about their self-organization. So what we are saying is the hierarchy of racism is a painful thing, but together we've got to work through it. And it is only by a group of people saying that we are no one's doormat. Our issues, yes, we are workers, but we are also Black people. And when we look at your interview that you had last week about Enfield and Cambridge, there are people there. Why is it that an incinerator is refused in Cambridge, but is approved in Enfield? Because the class and the ethnic thing, the racial thing, they comfortably overlap to stop an incinerator in Cambridge and approve one in Enfield. And there we have people like our sister, what's her name, from the Black Lives Movement. She was on your program last week, Delia.
Yeah, Delia.
Unless we have people like her on the ground, those kinds of things continue to happen. So basically, our campaign is spot on. It is at the right time. We are very clear about what it is we are doing. We are saying we are going to campaign, and we are already campaigning for 2021. So make no mistake, no one must say Labour Black Socialists is saying no campaigning. We are saying we are campaigning. But we are saying we are only campaigning for candidates whose anti-racism, anti-sexism, anti-prejudice against LGBTQ people, we can trust. And as far as Islamophobia is concerned, if you're an Islamophobe, we are definitely not going to volunteer for you. And how do we know that you are anti-racist? We will look at your voting record in the council. What did you do when it came to locating that incinerator in Cambridge? Did you say refuse in Cambridge, but you were one of those who said yes to Enfield? If you said yes to Enfield without consulting the residents, without considering the impact on the lives of those residents, we might not campaign for you, because we don't want to know what you say. We are tired of that. You say one thing in the morning, and at night when we are sleeping, you do something else. We will look at people, because there are people who are now saying no to tax rises, and others are quiet on no to tax rises. But we know the people who will pay for no to tax rises are the poor, because there will be cuts in services, children's services, social care services, healthcare services, and it will disproportionately impact on Black people. But guess what? White people should be our allies, because it will disproportionately impact on Black people, but it will affect more white people than Black people. So the white people should be our allies. The left, the organized left, should be our allies on this issue. I repeat, for those who wish to misrepresent our position, we shall be campaigning. We are already campaigning for candidates. But we shall look at the records of candidates. If you don't have, you tell us that you are with the left and you vote with the right, we might just go shopping. As one of our brothers said, we are going to go and do our hair. But the key thing is, we're not voting against anyone. We're not campaigning against anyone. But we know that is against the rules. There are people in the Labour Party, councillors and members of parliaments and bureaucrats, employees, who in 2019 campaigned against the Labour Party. They should be expelled. We who will campaign for anti-racist candidates should be loved, should be embraced, should be celebrated, and say, you are taking us back to the Labour Party. That came also out of struggle, because remember, the Labour Party at a time struggled with anti-racism. The first hostile climate that I can remember against immigrants was not by the Tories. After World War II, there were Labour Party people who did this. There were people in the trade union movement who said, we don't want Black bus drivers in Bristol. They can work as cleaners at the depot, they can wash the buses, but they cannot be bus drivers. And the trade union leadership didn't always have the courage to tell the workers, that's not the way to be. So what we are saying is, the trade union leadership should also celebrate us and love us, because we are reminding them about the blind spots that all of us have. It's not they have it, all of us have it. And we are indeed one another's keeper. And the Labour Black Socialists, in campaigning only for anti-racist candidates and not for candidates who look the other way or who are indifferent or worry about their careers, you do that, then we remind you of Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, who says, indifference to evil is worse than evil itself. So indifference to racism is even worse than racism itself. But we're on a caravan of love here. We need people to know, if you are an anti-racist and you have a record of ensuring that trade unions at local authority level are treated fairly, that you say that your local authority ought to negotiate with the trade unions to ensure that workers get a fair deal, that you are arguing for services that have been outsourced to private companies must be brought in-house so that workers can get good conditions of employment and wages. That is what we are talking about. Then we will vote for you. We will campaign for you. We will ask people to vote for you. But if you are outsourcing, we might not be interested. And that is our game. Sister, we're on the move. We are making progress. People are talking about the show. People are talking about our program. And the mere fact that our agenda is being misrepresented tells you people are having diarrhea. The people who should have diarrhea are having diarrhea.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you, my brother, for a brilliant, brilliant update. I absolutely loved it. You had me in stitches, I'm not going to lie. Absolutely loved it. But most importantly, we learned a lot from you as well, especially about, the mixed messaging of the campaign. Like Ridwan has said, we're not out here refusing to campaign. We are selectively campaigning for those that have a proven record of anti-racism. So at the end of the day, that is what the campaign is about. We're not just striking for the sake of striking. We're striking not at all. We're actually campaigning. So, at the end of the day, thanks again, Ridwan, and we will catch